This is stopping you from losing weight. The old rules about weight loss, fasting, and GLP-1 medications are being rewritten as we speak. Understanding the how and why to apply fasting over simply restricting your calories will prevent that dreaded weight loss plateau and get you on the fast track towards lasting weight loss. Not understanding this can lead to dire consequences for the future you, and so let's teach you what you can literally apply immediately after watching this video. No, fasting and caloric restriction are not the same thing. And yes, both of them can cause starvation mode, but there's absolutely a difference between a weight loss plateau and a GLP-1 weight loss plateau, aka starvation mode, aka zombie mode, and you're gonna understand that by the end of this video. My name is Dr. Jones, and for the last 15 years, I've been helping patients just like you achieve lasting weight loss. This whole topic of calories, calorie restriction versus fasting, how it relates to starvation mode, this has been long overdue. I mean, you just go on social media right now and you go to YouTube, you go wherever you go, there's a lot of completely contradicting opinions on what is fasting, how does it relate to caloric restriction, and I swear fasting works, but then how does it work? How is it different? Because it is calorie restriction, right? Or is it not? And so I'm really excited to share this information with you guys. And it's actually, I'm here in Plano, Texas. Just met my fiance's father and here for the week, and wanted to get this video done for you guys because I know it's been requested often. So yeah, I mean, look, I've been helping at this point over thousands of individuals with GLP-1 related weight loss and prior to GLP-1, and fasting is a big piece of it. Fasting is a huge piece of what we do, but how does it compare to caloric restriction? Before I even get into persuading you, and yes, I am pro-fasting. Yes, I think everybody should be doing some form of fasting. We can say pregnancy and very young children. Okay, fine. And even then, I might still save some minor forms of fasting, but they certainly don't need to be eating every single minute that they're awake. But nonetheless, if you are looking to make these changes, because that's why we're talking about this. We're talking about this because you're looking to lose weight, you're trying to make changes. If restricting your calories feels better and works better for you than simply fasting, do that. You should absolutely do that. Yes, I'm gonna tell you that the reason why it feels better is because your body is so unadapted to being able to mobilize body fat stores and access body fat, and therefore it is a challenge and a stressor for your body that's sort of past that threshold and why it feels uncomfortable. And all you gotta do is do it more and do keto, and you can do all this other stuff to make it better, and eventually when you get there, it'll be the best thing ever for you. Like, that hasn't changed. I still believe that to my core, but it's baby steps. It's conditions. Where are we at now and where are we at then? Where were we at then and where are we at now? And if we're doing better, that's all that matters. This is, the old tortoise and the hare. You could be the tortoise, you could be the hare. I don't care. I got nothing against hares or tortoises for that matter. It's personal preference. As long as we're consistent and as long as we strive to do better. And so I've had plenty of people who couldn't start a fasting regimen, felt like crap, hypoglycemia, brain fog, energy issues, and we started with just eating cleaner food. We stopped eating all that crap, you stopped eating all that garbage, and you replaced it with whole, natural food, fruits, vegetables, legumes, meats, like the basics. You do that, you're going to do better. And then I know that for those individuals, if you fall into this category watching this, that you're going to have an easier time being able to get into a fasting protocol by doing just that. So don't worry, don't stress, do better than what you've been doing in the past, and then we can just continue to improve. And in my opinion, we need to get you into a fasting protocol at some point, and you'll understand why by the end of this video. The landscape is very confusing. You got such advocates like myself for fasting and keto and just controlling insulin, right? And then you have advocates for it doesn't matter what you do. Just get into the caloric deficit. The caloric deficit is all you need. I mean, big players in this space, big names that I have a ton of respect for, like Dr. Mike Israel and Dr. Lane Norton, for example, are the first two that come to mind.
that have openly expressed that it's all about calories. Although Dr. Lane Norton seems to be evolving a bit, if I can say that, and I feel like he's headed down that direction of at least what he expresses to social media, which I think he's a very honest and genuine individual. So I'm sure he's expressing what he currently understands and agrees with at that time, as we all should, at least when our integrity is high. I think he's starting to evolve and he's starting to shift. But with Dr. Mike Israel, just some of the most recent videos, he's really bought into that. It doesn't matter. Fasting provides no additional benefit, just restrict your calories. And I strongly disagree with that, although I respect almost every single thing that man says, and he's also quite funny too as well. So why is there so much confusion? What's going on? Where does this just a discrepancy come from? Why is there so much disagreement? Well, scientifically speaking, this is really interesting. So number one, there's just been a lot more research that's been done on caloric restriction, hands down. So in the available data, the available pool of research that's been done, there's just a lot more research that's been done on caloric restriction. Now, don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of research that has been done in fasting, just significantly much less. And it's growing though. I think there's a lot more attention, there's a lot more reason to pay attention to this fasting thing, because for whatever reason, which that becomes the second question, why might it be better? Or just focusing on is it better, which I think it is. Why it's better gets into another conversation and a whole nother research and set of experiments that need to be done there. So yeah, I'm a full believer in the fact that fasting is better. But when we look at the data, oh my gosh, like I can't whoop out a study that says unequivocally the highest. Like there's always going to be research in both sides, guys. And this is what makes research in general so confusing and so difficult. And it's such a difficult landscape to navigate around, whatever you're talking about, because you can almost find a research article to validate your point. So you just got to understand that. The presence of a journal or a study from a reputable journal, and even a high-level study, the presence of that and that alone, just be careful when you're trying to draw your conclusions. And there's always an inherent bias for everybody to, whether intentional or not, whether ethical or not, or unethical or not, to look for validating research, to perform a conclusive position, to take a conclusive position, if you will. It's really easy, to look for validation and not look for invalidation of your point, which is truthfully what you should do if you're trying to strengthen your position. So when we go to the strongest and highest level research, and I'm going to end today's video because I got to go through some more information with you, but we're gonna head that direction. But I just want to put it out there. I'm aware that the most robust studies where they literally try to compare fasting or low carb, these are methods of controlling insulin compared to non-insulin controlled methods for weight loss, controlling calories. So both parties had the same amount of calories. They were at the same caloric deficit. But let's see what happens if you can eat carbs and insulin levels are as high as they're going to be. And let's see if we can lower insulin levels. The thought process of why intermittent fasting and ketogenic diets are so powerful is because what they both do is lower insulin levels. And let's see which one's better. Great. That would be an awesome study. And to my surprise, years ago when I first learned about this, the results looked the same. And we're talking, again, the most robust randomized control studies show exactly that fasting provided no additional benefit for weight loss compared to just simply restricting your calories. Now, I have a very powerful opinion and hypothesis regarding this that I'll share with you at the end of this video. But despite that, that still does not change just what I've seen and what I have experienced clinically. So pay attention to the end of the video so that you guys can learn what it is that makes me, despite that research, still extremely passionate and bullish on fasting versus simply caloric restriction. Let's talk fasting and let's talk caloric restriction. In essence, when you think about fasting, the absence of eating over a period of time, fasting is the most extreme version of calorie restriction. By definition, you're eating 0 calories. You couldn't restrict your calories anymore. So fasting is a version of calorie restriction. You have this large pool of calorie restriction, which is eating less calories over a period of time. Fasting can be said to be a type of caloric restriction. But what's also unique about fasting is you could not be in a caloric restriction. You could be in a caloric surplus and still be fasting. This is why this whole landscape can be really, really confusing. But for the sake of attempted simplicity, or at least increased simplicity, we're going to assume we're talking about fasting where the goal is weight loss. And so presumably over some period of time, we're trying to eat less, okay? And we're comparing this. We're trying to figure this out. There's two parts to this battle, right? If I was going to take one route with you guys, let's just say, all right, guys, you win. You guys being the fasting doesn't matter. Caloric restriction is all that matters. Pool of people. This is an imaginary panel of people in front of me, and I'm talking to them. Just want to bring you guys in. And all right, guys, you win. You convinced me. I can't prove that fasting has any sort of improved benefit to the body, physiologically, mechanistically to the body. It seems to be the same. But what about adherence? What about patient adherence? Because wouldn't that be simply enough to persuade you if you're watching this and you really are stuck in the weeds and you're trying to figure out? If we knew without a doubt some sort of like guaranteed answer to the question, wouldn't that be nice if we had answers? Guaranteed answers, guaranteed accurate answers to questions that we're asking. That would be nice. Although life would be pretty boring probably at that point. But if we did, nonetheless, and we knew that there was no benefit to fasting over caloric restriction, well, guess what? Guess what we do know? Check out this meta-analysis here, and there's plenty of them. Adherence is almost always higher with fasting, some sort of intermittent fasting protocol, compared to caloric restriction. And that just makes logical sense. Like you never just want to go by a logic and what seems to appear a certain way. That's the whole point of research, is to clarify what seems to be right and try to actually draw accurate conclusions. But it is nice that we can apply some logic to what the data shows us. And what the data shows us is that adherence is higher with intermittent fasting. I mean, just think about it. If you're asking an individual to eat less over, daily, weekly, monthly, if we simply just, because look at the two methods, right? If I'm fasting, presumably most of the time, I'm not going to have to count my calories. Not saying you don't have to all the times because of the nuance and the different styles of fasting, but there's less need to have to consciously count your calories because you can simply just restrict your window. And if you restrict your window, the idea, the logic is that it's harder to overeat. And that's very true. So if I just refrain from eating over an extended period of time, it's just easier to not overeat in a smaller window. It's easier to undereat in a smaller window. But if I allow myself the opportunity to splurge, and remember folks, how much of the food do we eat is within our conscious choice versus how much food are we splurging? Are we giving in to temptations? Are we giving in to cravings? Look, I get it. GLP-1 medications are all the craze and they're popping, but I'm talking to both of you folks out there, the GLP-1 space and the non-GLP-1 space. And I gotta be honest with you, the GLP-1 space, okay, you guys are a unique situation. You guys have the opposite problem. You're not eating enough. But if everyone else out there, this is a real struggle and it's a real mental challenge. And so you are going to, though, despite this, eat less when we restrict the window. So adherence alone is just the reason and should be end of discussion. Here I am continuing to talk to you on this hot day, and it is hot. I actually can't wait to jump in this pool later. But adherence is a big one, and I want to make that fully known, which is why in the beginning of this video I said, look, do what works for you and do what's better. But if you have nowhere to start, adherence alone is enough for me to feel confident and say, well, you should go ahead and try that route. But can we say over adherence that fasting is the way to go? So besides adherence, let's say adherence wasn't an issue, which one should you go with? Well, I'm still making the argument, and many are as well, that fasting is going to provide additional benefit. To get into and unravel the benefits that fasting gives you, let's just establish caloric restriction, a ton of benefit. What's the main benefit? You lose weight. If you truly are in a caloric deficit, you will lose weight. Now, that gets very nuanced, and why do people restrict their calories and they don't lose weight? Well, that's the whole point that I'm trying to make, that hormones play a huge role. But generally speaking, For the sake of simplicity, caloric restriction equals weight loss. And so that's an amazing benefit right there. But the list goes on with calorie restriction, improvements in metabolic health, improvements in lipid profile, triglycerides, LDL cholesterol, improvements in inflammation levels, improvements in longevity. It's well established, guys. Even if you change nothing else and you continue to eat the same garbage, standard American diet, sad, because the American diet is sad, guys. Like I can't stress this enough. It's awfully sad. If you just ate less of the sad, pitiful American diet, you'd start to lose weight, and I'll leave it there for now. But we would notice improvements in your health. But here's where the fasting comes in. So number one, fasting benefits independent of calorie restriction. That's what we're getting into. Because if these benefits that I'm about to get into are happening and taking place independent of caloric restriction, then what's probably happening when you're doing both is you get the best of both worlds. If you're fasting and in a caloric restriction over a period of time, presumably we're getting both benefits. So this is good. This is important. So number one, fasting can help anchor your circadian rhythm. Very, very powerful. So what is a circadian rhythm? Circadian rhythm is, think of it like the internal biological clock. There is a clock within our body, and the cells have awareness. Don't ask me how the hell they know what time it is. I'd like to think that even if you asked most scientists, they couldn't tell you. I think this is where I like to resort to the innate intelligence and the overall intelligence that exists within living organisms, which is very, very powerful. But I digress. Maybe some scientists can actually say, hey, it ain't that esoteric. Here's how it is. And I look forward to learning that. But there is. I understand what it is, so I understand how it works, and I understand the implications of it and why it's important to be aware that you have a circadian rhythm. You have an internal clock. And having a clock within your body allows your body to anchor certain things and have certain expectations and have a timing of the way, I should say when, it goes about doing certain things. For example, hunger. You maybe heard of ghrelin. Ghrelin is a very powerful peptide that's released in your stomach. It's the thing that goes gurgle, 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 and it causes the mechanical churning and the physical presence of hunger, which can be very powerful. I don't know what's worse, the mental cravings or the physical hunger. It's obviously individualized to the person, but ghrelin, one of the powerful cues for ghrelin is your circadian rhythm. When your body anticipates that you eat breakfast at 8 a.m. and you eat lunch at 12 p.m. and you eat dinner at 6 p.m., guess what happens? Ghrelin is signaled simply by your circadian rhythm knowing that 6 o'clock is coming, and it starts to tell you you're hungry. It starts to prompt the production of digestive enzymes and prepares your body for a meal. This is how powerful the circadian rhythm is. So having a dysfunctional circadian rhythm, as you can imagine, completely throws the body off. So anchoring a circadian rhythm, very, very powerful, probably one of the most important parts of what fasting does, which is why, side note, I'll make separate videos, but I'm very, very bullish on getting sunlight in the morning. Getting sunlight towards the eyeballs in the morning as soon as you possibly can anchors that circadian rhythm too as well. So this is a big deal. We got that anchored circadian rhythm. The effect of having an improved circadian rhythm, that's what produces so many other benefits. So the next thing about fasting is improved insulin sensitivity. This is massive because at the core and the base of obesity, at the core and the base of diabetes and obesity is insulin resistance. Whether you have PCOS, whether you have menopause, whether you have autoimmune diseases, it doesn't matter. All of these conditions and people that don't have these conditions can still have issues, right? These are just, you see them more often with these conditions, but there's this struggle to either just lose the weight, or even worse, there's a struggle to lose the weight and maintain it up, like maintain that weight loss for the rest of your life. And I truthfully believe while there's many pieces that contribute to this pathophysiology, to this physical development of this process, is insulin resistance. What is insulin resistance? It's a condition in which your body stops responding to insulin. The function of insulin is to shuttle the nutrients into your cells, out of your blood. You eat it, it goes into your blood, it gets into the body via the action of insulin. And I check out my other videos on YouTube. I have a ton of other videos where I take an hour just diving into insulin resistance, so I'll try not to spend too much time. But you got to understand this concept. This is a fundamental and paramount concept that seems to find itself into every one of my videos that I do, because a lot of it goes back to that. The net effects of insulin resistance is chronically elevated insulin levels or hyperinsulinemia. And remember, the function of insulin is to store. In fact, it's the most powerful storage hormone in the body. What does insulin like to do? Store, 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 grow, 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 grow. That's what insulin loves to do. And so when you're in a state where this is chronically elevated, it's completely unnatural and extremely bad for your health. And this is what drives obesity. Again, as much as I'd like to take a 20-30 minute side dive into this so I can come back and strengthen what we're talking about, I can't do that. Check out my other videos though if that's really, really important for you. Just take my word for it though, and we can continue on. Insulin resistance is important to understand. Guess what fasting does, guys? Fasting is a powerful, powerful way to begin to fix insulin resistance. How does it do that? Why is fasting so powerful at doing this? Well, let's take it back to some basic logic here. What led to the development of insulin resistance to begin with? It's not only lifestyle. We have cortisol from stress. We have toxicity. Those are definitely worth mentioning. But a huge contributing factor is elevating the insulin levels in the beginning. So when you're not insulin resistant, you don't have toxicity issues, you don't have stress-related spikes in your blood sugar, because that's what cortisol does. Well, what's going to bring your insulin levels up all the time to cause and push and drive the resistance? Lifestyle. And by lifestyle, I mean doing the things that you shouldn't be doing and not doing the things that you should be doing. And guess what, folks? Fasting, at least intermittent fasting, but I'm a big believer of long fasting, in my opinion, is the most powerful intervention. Because what's the fastest ways, out of all the different foods you could eat, I guess is a better way to word it, out of all the different foods you can eat, what's gonna lower your blood sugar the most? Let me give you guys a couple seconds to think about that. Out of all the foods you can eat, what is gonna lower your blood sugar most? Eating nothing. Eating nothing. That's the most powerful effect on your blood insulin levels. So if we go through longer periods of not eating, we have inevitably and in fact lowered our insulin levels, at least from the food component. And it's that period of time that we can produce with lowered insulin levels that begins to allow the insulin resistance to heal, to repair. So we got circadian rhythm, we have improvements in insulin resistance, we have inflammation markers. Caloric restriction will lower inflammation, but fasting has additional inflammation reducing abilities via cellular autophagy. Awesome process, this cellular autophagy, where your body goes through deep healing and cleansing due to the lack of eating over a period of time. Your body goes into repair mode and it starts to break down non-essential tissues to recycle the tissues, the amino acids, the proteins, for essential tissues. So awesome process, cellular autophagy, triggered by fasting, not triggered as much by caloric restriction. Finally, modulation of the gut microbiome. What in the world does that mean? Modulation is an interesting word. You hear low-dose naltrexone does that as well. Thymosin alpha-1 does that as well. That's a peptide, that's a medication. Modulation means improve, which could mean either increase if it needs to increase that particular thing to improve it, or decrease if it needs to decrease to improve that particular thing. Modulation is awesome. I forgot also another example of modulation is adaptogenic herbs. Adaptogenic herbs can help your body deal with either high or lower cortisol levels, stress to the body. And so modulation just means improve in either direction, whatever is needed. And so we know that fasting can modulate the gut microbiome, meaning increase or decrease the number, improve the ratio of good bugs to bad bugs. And the whole study of the gut microbiome is just absolutely fascinating. And eating 20 to 30 different fruits and vegetables is also very powerful for the gut microbiome, which is why I recommend and stress that to everybody, or to supplement with the fiber product if you can't get 20 to 30 different colorful and vibrantly colored fruits and vegetables. So I think you have a pretty good understanding of why I believe what I believe and why I preach what I preach. Like, it's been crazy, folks. Like, my own personal experience, I lost over 100 pounds, gosh, over 20 years ago. I was 16 years old, lost 100 pounds, and then I yo-yoed. And for almost a decade after that, I continued to regain and lose and regain the same 50 pounds. And it wasn't until I learned about intermittent fasting and then eventually long form fasting, that I was able to achieve stability in my weight. And then when I became a functional DC over the last decade, I incorporated lots of prolonged fasting, and that's how I ended up developing the FLOA protocol, FLOA, fasting like our ancestors. I created structure where structure was missing in the world of long fasting, and the clinical outcomes that I would get on my patients was just out of this world. So much better compared to other functional protocols that did a lot of the same stuff. That, and functional protocols just means, by definition of standards, aggressive improvements in your lifestyle, like really giving a shit, you know? Isn't that crazy? Like, it seems like to give a shit and to pay attention to those little daily habits is considered a little abnormal. It's actually considered very abnormal, but that's what people do when they work with a functional practitioner, and holy crap, their health gets better. So doing that, but doing it with much longer fasting compared to other functional practitioners, I noticed much better outcomes. And so, you know, it's, at the depth of my core, I'm convinced that fasting is fundamentally different. And when you really think about it, asking your body to retrieve energy from its stored sources, right? Body fat. Body fat is our reservoir, because we have two forms of energy that we burn, carbohydrates and fat. But as far as storing carbohydrates, if we're not eating, we can store about 18 hours on average worth of stored energy in the form of carbohydrates. We call it glycogen. But fat, we have months and months of reservoir of fuel ready to go to survive us. That's why I always think it's crazy when people think that and act as if the human body, you know, humans were meant to eat 3 to 6 meals every single day, 7 days a week. Like, that's what we were meant to do. Very, very different than saying we should do it. And we talked a little bit about feeling better and what it is, but just take a step back and look at evolution for a second. For 3 million years, humans never had steady states of food. Like, it just didn't happen. Not until about 10,000 years ago, due to agricultural times, did humans actually have steady states of food, so where they could actually eat consistently, as opposed to 3 million minus 10,000, folks, you do the math. That's a very long time where survival depended upon our ancestors' ability to survive long periods, days at a time, probably weeks at times, where they couldn't eat, and then being able to hunt, secure, and feast afterwards, and store that extra fuel for the next go around, next period of time before they can eat again. That's what our ancestors had to do. For me, I look at this and I go, well, damn, maybe there could be some benefit to our body to do some of that. I'm not saying, advocating that we should go that extreme with it. Although my protocol FLOA is the most aggressive prolonged fasting regimen in the planet, it's a version of that. All it is challenging our body. And I think there's something to be said about that. I like to quote Dr. David Sinclair, but the human body is a coping mechanism. The human body, it literally, stresses can alter our genome. And not all stress is bad. We got to understand that. Guess what? When you tear it up in the gym, no one's arguing about that stress. We do know that you can overtrain and it can be too much stress. But outside of overtraining, we all know that the stress of lifting weights, whatever you're doing, creating those micro traumas, because muscle fibers is just a bunch of fibers like this, and they move when they flex and they extend, contract, and concentrically, eccentrically, and dissect those muscle fibers. There's smaller fibers. You dissect those fibers. There's even the smallest fibers, actin and myosin filaments, are actually tearing down. It's micro traumas. That's an inflammatory process. You are literally destroying tissue, because we know what happens. The stress response from the body is awesome. You grow if you do it right. Quoting one of my favorite lifters, if you guys know C.T. Fletcher, I command you to grow. So C.T. Fletcher has this crazy video about commanding his muscles to grow because the muscle-mind connection. But anyways, the muscles grow from an initial response, a stress adaptation, which gives us the benefit of hypertrophy, which gives us muscular growth. And the benefit of muscular growth, well, you guys know, hopefully by now, and see my other videos, how amazing that is. Well, there's plenty of stressors that our body positively adapts to, and not all stress is good either. So when it comes to fasting, in my opinion, it's finding the right amount of stress that your body can safely tolerate so that it can benefit. Well, what are we doing when we're fasting, right? We're not eating. When we're not eating, what does that mean? Well, your body has a certain energy demand that it has to, like, it needs energy constantly. Every hour, there's a certain amount of energy your body needs. And your body is going to burn that energy. It's just a matter of where it gets it from and how stressful was it to the body during that situation, right? Think about that for a second. Your body has X amount of calories that it's burning, no matter what, it has to. Now, how much calories you burn, that changes. We're going to talk about starvation mode and weight loss plateau in a second, but your body has a certain amount of calories. There's a requirement. So all that, you're always going to burn. But what changes the experience is what you're burning for fuel and how stressful it is for your body. Well, this is where fat adaptation or metabolic flexibility come into play. So what is fat adaptation? Fat adaptation is your body's adaptation to being able to burn fat. You've heard of this term. The other term that you may or may not have heard of, metabolic flexibility. Metabolic flexibility simply refers to your metabolism's ability to alternate fuel sources. When someone asks me, what is metabolic health? To me, that's metabolic health. Metabolic health is flexibility in your metabolism, because it's much less stressful for your body when it can shift fuel sources which are more ideal in the moment, because carbohydrates can fuel higher energy demanding activities. Weightlifting, running, sprinting, explosive sports all require this glycolytic pathway, carb burning pathway, and fat oxidating or beta oxidation. You have endless supply, but it can't fuel. There's a threshold beyond which the intensity of the exercise, fat alone, fat beta oxidation cannot supply, right? So your body's kind of shifting in and out of both, but for a lot of you guys are insulin resistant. And when you're insulin resistant, your beta oxidation is almost non-existent. Almost non-existent. But what about when you put into a caloric deficit, aka GLP-1 medications or not GLP-1 medications? You're trying to lose weight, calorie restriction, right? But if your fat adaptation is so low because you're so insulin resistant, you're in that caloric deficit. Your body's got to burn that energy somewhere. You ain't going to keel over and cease to exist. Well, that's where the stress comes in. You are forcing your body to do something that's much harder to do. And you'll hear me say this term a lot. You want the body working with you, not against you. Let me say that again. You want your body working with you, not against you. And this is why I'm just, without a doubt, convinced that fasting is the way to go, because fasting lowers insulin levels. And if we can begin to lower insulin levels, we can begin to heal insulin resistance. We can begin to lower insulin levels more. We can get out of that hyperinsulinemic state. And now your body is going to start to cooperate with you. Because remember, what does insulin want to do? Grow, 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 grow. Store, 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 store. Yes, the randomized control trials told us that it didn't matter. Individuals lost the same amount of fat as long as calories were equated for. But then we have at the same time completely contradictory research. This is important to understand. Long term, because the primary method of weight loss has always been caloric restriction, we don't have any proof of any sort of substantial or at all lasting weight loss. I mean, it's a freaking myth. Over 85% of individuals that have ever went on a weight loss program and successfully lost more than 10% of their body weight, as you can see here in the study, have failed to keep it off. Over 85%. Remember, the primary focus has always been about calories. Calories, calories, calories. So long-term lasting weight loss is non-existent. And they've done further studies, by the way. This study is pretty powerful, where they actually looked at the individuals, the 15%, the unicorns, right? And I talk about those a lot. What makes them a unicorn? What did they have? Why were they able to achieve? And at the end of the day, it was all related to mental toughness, which makes sense to me, right? It was specifically, what does that mean, mental toughness? They continue to count their calories every single day. They never stopped exercising. They exercised every day. They had strong supportive communities and groups. They prevented their anxiety and depression, meaning they had systems in place to try to work with their anxiety and depression so it wouldn't get out of control, right? So again, mental toughness, if you had to summarize all that together. Well, this is why it's only been 15%, because I do think mental toughness is that one crazy variable that could override everything, because I happen to be an individual that thinks you are not your body, you are the thing that runs your body. And mental toughness is very fluid and dynamic. It's not static. You can rise to the occasion of a moment that is perceived by you at that time to be extremely important, AKA gun in your head. You really get to know yourself in that very moment, right? It's crazy, but mental toughness is just as much a decision as it is a desire. But again, we don't have a bunch of David Goggins running around this world right now. And so we're stuck, right? We can't rely on mental toughness alone. We need the body to work with us. And I'm telling you, if we can fix insulin resistance, if you can lower the insulin levels, you're going to produce an environment for where your body is working with you and not against you. Now let's talk about starvation mode, because this is happening way more often now that we have GLP-1 medications out there. So what is starvation mode? Let's take a step back. What is a weight loss plateau? A weight loss plateau is simply where your body stops losing weight. Now, a weight loss plateau can be driven by, and I have plenty of other videos where I take a deep dive into weight loss plateau, and I know we're getting near the end of this video. I like to cap it off at an hour. So you were losing weight, meaning you were in some sort of caloric deficit over a period of time. If you were doing my protocol, you were doing lots of fasting, and you were doing keto the days you weren't fasting, but your weight loss stopped. Now, there's two reasons why that happened. Before GLP-1 medications, the first guess I would say is, all right, well, restrict your calories more. You were in like a 300, 400 calorie restriction. You lost a bunch of weight. You weigh less. You're burning less calories. Let's restrict it more. Okay, fair enough. But in GLP-1 world, which is primarily what we're dealing with lately, most of you have already cut your damn calories in half, sometimes even more, because the damn problem right now in the system is there's no coaching, there's no guidance, there's no support. It's like anybody and everybody is just throwing people on these medications. I have so much respect for obesity specialists, board certified obesity specialists. I consider myself an expert in obesity, but I'm not a medical doctor. I make that very clear all the time. I've just been helping people in this space for 20 years, fueled by a passion because of my own struggles. But out of everybody prescribing these medications, I have the most respect for board certified obesity specialists, because they actually understand the magnitude of lifestyle intervention and how powerful those things can be and should be. I just completely disagree with the narrative that they're trained in, which is obesity is a chronic irreversible disease. I say bullshit. And many other functional practitioners would agree with me, because they've reversed obesity and diabetes all the time. So I disagree with their narrative, but I respect their approach. My problem is with med spas and all these telemed and virtual clinics that don't give a crap about you, and it's all about this. And the only question they have for you is, are you ready to increase your dose, Mrs. Jones? Like, come on, are you freaking kidding me? Open up your eyes. To quote one of my, to quote Eddie, oh man, what's the British dude, the nurse from, I know you guys know who I'm talking about, because if you listen to me, you probably follow this space. He's famous on TikTok and Instagram, and he goes, wake the fuck up.
If you're taking this every day, you're a fucking idiot. You need to wake the fuck up.
He's hilarious. And there's times where I find myself wanting to say that, not to copy him, but almost as a respect to him and what he does. But GLP-1 medications, when people are on these medications and they hit a weight loss plateau, I already know it's unlikely needing to restrict your calories more. You probably have restricted it too much. And so what ends up happening when you restrict your calories too much, over a long enough period of time, your body goes into starvation mode. So starvation mode is where your body says, this is a threat to my survival. Let me crank down the metabolism. So it literally cranks down your thyroid hormone production. Now, it's not so much that your thyroid hormone production decreases, not to get too technical, but your conversion of your less active form T4 into the more active form T3, the conversion decreases, and your body increases the production of reverse T3, which, long story short, is sort of this guy that kind of can block the receptor sites of T3, your active thyroid hormone, which is one of the reasons why people could be on medications and still not feeling good with their thyroid medications, because reverse T3, stress-related hormone, is blocking thyroid hormone activation. So when this happens, your the amount of calories that you're burning dramatically decreases. And now you're at a standstill where you're eating less, you're burning more from your exercise if you are exercising, and you're not losing weight. And it's a result of caloric restriction. Too aggressive of a caloric restriction over a long enough period of time, exacerbated by insulin resistance, inflammation, and probably a bunch of unknown genetic predispositions that we don't even know, if I had to guess. But insulin resistance is a big one. And I want to bring it back because we talked about insulin resistance as, the basis of obesity, in my opinion, and weight maintenance resistance. Going back to store, grow. When you're trying to reduce your calories, but you're insulin resistant, the insulin fights back. It'll skyrocket your hunger. You ever wonder why some people are a lot more hungry in their caloric deficit versus others? It's because of insulin resistance. It's the signal from insulin trying to get you to stop, trying to get you to get back into a surplus, because that's what insulin wants to do. That's your body working against you. It can skyrocket the hunger. And the data already, this is well documented in the literature. And the other part related to thyroid is it downregulates your metabolism. So the presence of insulin can cause feedback to the thyroid to decrease production. Again, what a powerful mechanism that's working against you in this case, because that's what insulin's trying to do. Remember, insulin's not supposed to be elevated when you are not eating. A healthy individual who's insulin sensitive, you could go on a rampage for a certain period of time and eat 10 meals of crap sugar all day. But while you have insulin sensitivity, over a 24-hour period, insulin levels are still pretty low, percentage-wise of the entire day. But once you start becoming more and more resistant, now you start having chronically elevated insulin levels all the time. That's a whole different ballpark. That's a whole different scenario. Completely unnatural. Human beings were not built for that. We were not supposed to have that, which is why as a survival mechanism, the human body develops resistance to the insulin. And that drives it up even more. And, it's a self-perpetuating cycle. You could fix this. You have a way out. There's a way out. And what we deal with more times than not is this GLP-1 induced weight loss plateau. So the solution to this, and again, I have deeper dives in other videos, is a reverse diet or a metabolic reset where you are slowly increasing your caloric intake over a 3 to 6 week period, say 200 to 300 calories every single week, slowly increasing your calories. And you'll pay attention to your symptoms, you're feeling better, you're not gaining weight, you're coming out of zombie mode. I call it zombie mode a lot because, just see for yourself. There's a lot of celebrities right now that look like freaking zombies because unfortunately they're not eating enough, they're not lifting weights, they're not consuming enough calories, enough protein, enough nutrients. And as a result, they don't look good, they don't look healthy. The main takeaway, folks, is that calorie restriction is awesome. Fasting is a type of calorie restriction. Fasting can be a type of calorie restriction. In my opinion, fasting is the best way, the right way, and the only way in most cases to achieve lasting weight loss. If you're at a point in your health where you try fasting and it doesn't work for you, but eating 6 small meals a day of healthy food works for you, and you can see that your health is improving, again, like I said at the beginning of the video, do that. Don't take any shame for that. Don't feel like something's wrong, like you're doing better. But I'm gonna challenge you. But at some point in the future, now that once you start feeling better, you're gonna have to guess, and unless it's arbitrary, right? 1 month later, 3 months later, I don't know. But test yourself. Try eating 1 or 2 hours later. Try ending your eating 1 or 2 hours later, and keep trying to compress that puppy to 8 hours. And you tell me in the comments that you're not able to do that. That's the goal, because that is, in my opinion, the most ideal scenario, both ancestrally speaking, both mechanistically, when you look at the function of the body and the different mechanisms that we have, the ability to store massive amounts of energy as fuel to burn, the ability innately, whether we're good at it or not, to beta oxidate for days on end, for weeks on end, produce these magical things called ketone bodies, which are clean burning fuel in times that we're not eating. Whether we should be ketogenic for the rest of our life, that's a different story. And that's a whole nother ballpark. Carnivore, keto, long-term, no. I'm not saying no, I'm saying no, that's another conversation, not the point of this video. The point of this video is to say fasting is not calorie restriction. Fasting is much more powerful. Even if you don't believe any of the fasting independent benefits, that you walk away with at least an understanding that fasting is easier to adhere to and should be the goal if you can't do it already currently. And just take my word for it from my own personal experience and the clinical experience that I have over the last 10 years. And if you guys are wanting to join this community, if you want to be part of something big, I'll link to it in the show notes, but there'll be a link where you can schedule a free consultation. This community is awesome. We have thousands of like-minded individuals who all agree in kicking ass. And while we embrace GLP-1 medications, while we embrace peptides like AOD 9604, Samoralin, Tesamoralin, we always and also believe in lifestyle intervention to get the best possible results, because the goal is, for many of our people in our community, medication independence, microdosing, intermittent use protocols. We can get you there. I have the confidence in getting you there. I'll show you the way. I can't force you to take this walk, guys. So be sure to reach out if that's something that you're interested in. If you enjoyed this video, guys, if you liked where I was going with this and it resonates with you, check this video out there. It's a complimentary deep dive, further getting into the lifestyle approaches and the other peptides. We'll see you guys later.